People are popping in. Welcome, everybody. Come on in.
Yep.
Okay, we are recording. So I'll just give it a 30 seconds or so and then make sure everyone's in. Welcome, everybody. Just going to wait about 15-30 seconds just to make sure everyone's logged in and present. And then I will get started. Excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna kick it off. Okay. Welcome everybody to the fourth talk in the spring 2024 Sara Little Turnbull Visiting Designer Speaker Series. This semester we've been exploring, just if you haven't been following along, the domain of package design and packaging, unwrapping how they shape our perceptions and experiences. See what I did there? As part of the package design class running in the art department at Lehman, this lecture series is running as sort of like a living textbook for that class. We have some students with us today from that class. We have the professor from that class, and they've been following along as we discuss packaging. And we've been examining it from a few different facets, and from like practical applications of packaging to its more symbolic meanings in our society and consumer culture. And today we're going to take a slightly different approach, and we're going to talk about the concept of identity as a form of packaging. We'll be discussing how individuals and groups package themselves to present a certain image to the world, and how this packaging influences our social perceptions and interactions. Just a reminder, this series is open to the public, so we might have people from the in addition to this class, we might have people just popping in just to get into the discussion with us. To that end, there's a Q&A, question and answer module at the bottom of your screen. We really welcome questions and comments from everybody who's here. I'll keep an eye on that. So as we're doing the presentation and talking, if there's any questions or comments that I think, fit into the conversation, I'll throw them out to our guest. Our guest, speaking of which, is Luis Stephenberg Alers. He's a multidisciplinary artist whose work reflects the visual expression of specific historical moments. He was raised in Puerto Rico, and he brings a rich cultural perspective to his art, exploring themes of communication, cultural exchange, and memory through a diverse range of mediums and installations that we're going to take a look at today. Throughout his career, Luis has maintained an experimental and mixed media practice, integrating electronic images and conceptual art into his work. He's also known for his role in founding and directing community-oriented art initiatives, such as the Bronx Hispanic Festival and a Latin American Art Biennial in the Bronx, which the Lehman College Art Gallery actually participated in. Geez, it escapes me now. It was either 2 or 1 year ago. If Bart is here, he can remind us in the comments when that was. But I remember the show, and we did a whole lecture series surrounding this identity of colonialism and Hispanic culture, Latin American culture. So we're gonna delve back into that, I assume, today. We'll also have the opportunity to explore Luis's unique perspective on packaging as a metaphorical concept, and talk about how his artistic practice engages with ideas of identity, communication, cultural exchange, all of this good stuff. So please join me in welcoming Luis to our speaker series. Luis, thank you so much for meeting with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
It's been an honor to be able to talk to you and your students about concepts in the creative or in the art practice.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation of my creative process laying on the timeline between the idea and the realization of that idea. I start my art practice when I decided I will continue doing art in a professional level. I was interested in painting, but after engage in the studies of and the education in art, I finally decided I'm going to work with concepts that
Mm,
was in fashion in the 70s and the 80s. So I consider myself in some way a conceptual artist. So everything that I do in related to art that also is related to life is focused in the idea of what art is, what is the meaning of art. So when you invite me about talk about in your class and you explain me that is a design
mhm,
the concept of design, I find that was so interesting, very interesting, because the design is that timeline that I refer between the idea and the realization of that idea. So I have then I do my little research.
yeah.
So I have a PowerPoint where some notations that I'm going to share in that way we can see uh, what I'm talking about, right? So I'm going to share that. I'm sorry for the not the expert, but okay. I'm going to go to the PowerPoint and share it. Boom. Right. And here I am in the PowerPoint. Boom. Okay. This is what I mentioned about the idea and the realization.
Yeah.
And the blue line will be the timeline. I call it the timeline language because as an artist, and like I tell you, as a conceptual artist, I see the art in the context of language. So I will work with, for me, that timeline and the design itself is the language that I create to get to the final point. And the elements that I use in that language are the semiotics structures of that idea. So, uh, see, going back to design, of course, they are going to share the work, but before we share the work, I'm going to talk about some ideas and the design in the human's life, in our everyday life, is very important. It's extremely important because it's what gives structure and support to any goal that we have. I think that the human action of will is what when we want to do something, it's necessary to be planning, and you have to have a vision and a creative planning. And the design is the projected plan that think in the study and the practice. Those are very basic things that you will do. And in my case, in my practice of art. And that is, it need to be focused in some kind of interrelation between the user, as myself, and my relationship with the surrounding culture. In psychology, is our ego, and then is our external life. That's the surrounding culture. So, in order for me to communicate with that outside world, I need to create some method, some way, and that will be the design. And that design, or in my case, again, I say that my artwork, right? Uh, I need to take in consideration a couple of things like visual attributes, functional operation, contextual time and space, and sociocultural conditions. For the artists or for the art proposals, the visual attributes are very important,
Yeah.
extremely important. If you design a car, then then you are more focused in the mechanical action plan. Or if you are designing an electronic board, you also need to focus in the mechanical action plan. But if you are designing a poster,
Yeah.
or you are developing a advertising campaign about the flu, then you are more into the visual attributes, and those attributes we're going to talk about at the end. We're going to talk about that. Also, in the functional operation, if you're going to send a spaceship to the space, you need to be focused in the nature of properties of matter and energy. But if you functional operation have something to do with art, then you're talking about semiology and the study of symbols and meaning.
Yeah.
So it's different elements that you can use in a functional operation. And then the contextual time is what motivates you to do that in a particular time and in a particular space. Also, something that gonna be affecting your sense of design, sense of design, is the social cultural condition. And there is the values of ethics, or values of resources. Or you going to focus in some ideas that you want to communicate in terms of ethics, or you just need the resource, the money or the materials to work on that. All of these elements are what are the tools that I use when I work in the process of designing one of my proposals, my cultural proposals. I can share some of, after that, I'm gonna share some of my work that is focusing in the visual attributes. It's a language that is created in the visual reality of an art proposal. I started studying painting. What happened? Okay, I started studying painting at the end of the 70s, in a long time. We are in 2024. At the end of the 70s in Puerto Rico, and painting in particular in Puerto Rico was an exercise that it was well accepted in the cultural environment in Puerto Rico. Painting, especially figurative art. It was affected by the agrarian economical structure that Puerto Rico have. Puerto Rico, until the half of the last century, until 1957, 60, was an agrarian economy. So therefore, you will see a lot of landscapes and a lot of artworks that refer to that agrarian agrarian reality and the factors that archetypes, for example, elements that was in that agrarian reality. After 1950s, Puerto Rico become industrial as a United States territory in some kind of colonial stage. Um, uh, they decide, the United States and some leaders in Puerto Rico decide to change drastically the agrarian economy that based in agriculture to uh, an industrial economy. So they train and they educate people, and in 10 years, Puerto Rico become industrial. So when I start working in painting, the landscape was very important for me. But at the same time, as a contemporary, as a modern person, I was interested in Lucio Fontana, for example, that question the nature of the medium, the nature of painting, and also the conceptual problem between reality or and presentation and representation, between presentation and representation. So I like Lucio Fontana in those days because he cut the canvas, and he created a space in a surface that is bidimensional, is flat. So those was elements that I was very interesting in my study of painting because I thought about that I will be a painter. And then, then I find myself in a very positive encounter when I start understanding Marcel Duchamp, for example, at the same time. And the problem of presentation and representation was no longer an issue in the surface, and I was able to bring that to the three-dimensional world. So some kind of sculptoric installations uh, was my exploration at those moments. They don't like me in the school because we was not supposed to set up artworks in the hallways. So that so this piece was an issue because they tell me no, we don't have no exhibition, and you took the freedom to set up that in the hallway, so please remove it. So these are nice memories. Going back to that exploration on the elements of art in terms of three-dimensional, bidimensional, ready-made, and cultural values. How we work in the design of these kind of pieces? For example, the visual elements that something that I don't comment too much in the first notes is that there is functional designs and dysfunctional designs. There you can do a design, but what's going to be the difference between a design that function and a design that is a completely non-functional, but is an expression of a particular idea that really never gonna work. And what gonna rule this function or dysfunction condition? Uh, nature, did nature do a design to 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 be what it is? for example, a mountain. Who designed a mountain? Well, those are things that itself they get built, but my experience as a simple human need to base myself on the elements of equilibrium that nature gives us. So when I work, I need to balance artwork. These pieces can be very experimental, but there is an issue of balance, of visual balance, that I need to consider in the same way that a traditional artist does. Some traditional artists will look the work, the composition, for example, in the design, and in this case are different materials and more experimental, but I look for the visual balance. And so what is the visual balance? Is what I learned from nature. How you define a visual balance or a balance in or harmony in music, where we have that as a reference is the nature. The nature is where will have harmony and and the balance on nature. Our experience with nature is what push us to repeat that experience of harmony and balance. Here we go back and this is Rauschenberg. The influence of Rauschenberg in a Jibaro mentality. Jibaro is a hillbilly in Spanish, right? So my hillbilly, I born in New York. I grew up in the countryside, and my grandfather was one of the last traditional agriculture. He was a farmer. So these pieces are related to Rauschenberg work in painting, combining paintings, where he will bring materials and combine them in his pictorial proposal. And so these paintings were some kind of Puerto Rican combining painting. And of course, I was just following and doing the analysis of the history of art, because art is what I know about art. All the history that I know, if the history of that I know about art is just uh, 3 drawings and 2 sculptures, whatever I do will be that will be the influence. So by doing an analysis of the history of painting in this case, I will be building up my pictorial language. When I did painting, I work in theater. I decided then just to focus in visual arts. Theater is too many people to realize a project, and each of them actors have a personality, the technical people other one, too many people to do an artwork. So I went back to painting that I always like, but I also was interested at that moment very soon that I just don't want to be just a painter, that art is several mediums: culture, dancing, literature, theater, movies. So then I start thinking in something that I call synthesism, that pushed me to explore the idea in all the mediums that I can do it. Joseph Kosuth I was able to meet him. That was something very interesting. in the 80s, that movement took the minimalism or the reduction as a way to reach out the concept. I want the contrary. I want to expand myself to all the mediums that I can in order to get to the concept. I don't know who is wrong or who is right, but on definitely I define myself into the multimedia and explore for more mediums. So I reach out in the performance, especially looking for some kind of social engagement, because in Puerto Rico, the left political thinking always tell you art for the people. Are you doing art for the people? Abstraction is not good for the people. So they have this idea about engagement, but I think that they never really was focusing the right engagement, because some of them they consider that I was doing some crazy stuff, but not art. So I really was looking for the engagement that I heard from my older fellows. So social engagement was very important for me, and performance and happening take me close to that. Um, ready made, ready made was already my life for different reasons, and one of the reasons was the economical. And I think that nobody talking about that when they talking about ready made or arte pobre or any person that recycle materials. Uh, One of the factors is the document. When you recycle a material, itself have a history. So by bringing it in your intention, in your proposal, then you also are bringing that piece of history that have some energy itself. And how we integrate that to our design is what the appropriation is what make that part of us. In this case, I have a couple of pieces here that I was connecting to also to the human figure, because in conceptualism, tautology is very important. Tautology and art is very important. And my conversation with Joseph Kosuf, I understand that very well about tautology, and it's some kind of reference to itself. So the human figure become some kind of tautological element in art, because when you look yourself, you also are talking about yourself, and there is where Lacan is very important. Lacan that also in psychology tells us that a little kid built the identity by looking itself in the mirror. So that's important that you see those little mirrors in babies' toys. Why are you giving a little mirror to them? And it's, because people like Lacan make them understand that when the little kid look itself, start building so identity. So when you do a portrait or when you create a figure using the icon language, because it's a language, like Magritte said, this is not a pipe. Of course, it's not a pipe. It's a drawing of a pipe. So I start working with the human figure to question human figure itself.
This is interesting because we have, not to interrupt, but we have this discussion like all the time with students about like figuration, and whether they're, a lot of the time when you're starting out as a painter, you look at photographs, right, and you use those as references. And the thing about photographs today, which maybe differs from 10 years, 20 years ago, or even 100 years ago, is that we all have cameras in our pockets now, pretty much. And those cameras, they're they have a specific look. The way the lenses work, the way the optics work, the processing that happens behind the scenes with software, all this stuff is being done by the technology so that when you get that picture, it's already several steps removed from reality and it becomes its own kind of like language, a visual language that we didn't have anything to do with, like Apple, Samsung, these companies develop this stuff right for us, and it's defining our language, our visual language. And that's why we always have this discussion. You can see right away when a painting was made directly from like an iPhone photo, right? There's all the optics are in there. You can see that the camera did something to it. So we'll often urge, especially painting and drawing students, to draw from memory, because what you're saying is that, if I'm correct, is that our memory or our understanding of the human form and of ourselves, we've constructed in our heads. We did the construct of that, over time. It wasn't done by a camera, like it wasn't done by software. And I think that's a
Not
really
by a
important,
mirror or by looking each other.
yeah, by a mirror or just looking at each other, right? Through from in life or whatever. So I think that's like another, I mean, it's another way to put this discussion about working from photographs versus working from memory or working from life, because it's more about like the visual language, right? Like what was communicated in the visual language differently when you do it that way. And we've had students who have done all of those things. There was one grad student or BFA student who did a series of paintings, one from photograph, a self-portrait from photograph, another from the mirror, and another in like just from memory, and they're all very different. And it turns out that the visual language is all different and the meaning is different, right? That means at the end the meaning is different. So I think this is a really important point that you bring up.
Yeah, but then you bring the something tough, man. You bring in Foucault, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of instantaneity. So
Hmm.
so the camera today, you see, the iPhone is like the microwave,
Yeah,
right? Like the microwave in the kitchen, where you can put a frozen chicken and cook it. But then Foucault talk about the distance,
yeah,
uh, how instantaneity is there, but at the same time, create a distance from the real experience.
yeah,
So
it
right
divorces
now
us from it. Yeah,
we are
yeah,
talking to this system, but it's not the same if we was standing in the same room.
yeah. No, that's,
Uh, so,
yep, yeah,
yeah,
very true.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So something in this piece to move on.
Yeah,
I have this piece from 1977 in the bottom. This one here with these kids here. You were supposed to sit down there, and then it's a mirror, and then you see flowers in back of you. The piece, the name of the piece was in English. It was flowers in your behind. So it was talking about integration and that experience with visual icons. So that was in 1977.
that's funny.
So during the 80s, I went to Mexico and then I came to New York, and I really was looking and exploring on the human image. And the human image, I also work in videos to New York too. I was interested in Pike as well. So I came to New York and I learned how to make videos, and I used to build installations, but in the same context of human reference and performance. There is an example in City College. Artisan Computer was a project that a friend of mine, Neil Zosman, come from a generation. He studied with Non Pike upstate when Non Pike gave a few semesters up in a school upstate a Wego. It was a bunch of young artists in New York that was doing videos, So one of them was a teacher in City College, and I was an artist in resident in the 80s. So I worked in this project that was using Marxism as the theme. Um, relation, brain, and hand, and McLuhan, for example, we built extensions of our sensitive experience, like the wheel is an extension of the leg, a pail is an extension of the hand. And then I did a video, experimental video using those actions. And we go back, where is the design? Where is the design in this? So here the design was further up. The design was not just based in visual balance, also was based on function, mechanical function. That's an element that Calder, for example, in his sculpture, are not just steady sculptures, are sculptures that move. So there is a design in a mechanical action. Yeah, these are like documents that are the plan, going back to the design. These are the designs for this.
Oh, so those are more like these are like diagrams or sketches in some way.
Exactly.
I mean, they
Yeah.
read as art. They read as fine art, right? They're beautiful and they have like a
Well,
mystery to them. But yeah,
well, for me, the documents are part of, anything that I do are documents in
yeah.
my proposal. Anything. Some artists have works that are like sketches for, right?
Mhm.
And no, this is not the real artwork is this one. Those are just sketches. In my case, these are the sketches that are the plan for the experience later on, and all of them are part of the work.
Wow.
Uh, and at the end of the 80s in New York, I went back to the beginning in terms of look for my identity, my archetypes, um, memories of ancestors,
Mm.
and then I come back to work with materials. At the beginning, where I did painting, I was working more with the chromatic characteristic, like for example, of color. And then at the end, I become more interested in the colors that objects have itself. And I can put some pigment on it, but more minimal. And I just work with elements. There is a piece here with a root from a tree and a banana paper that I did. I make paper in a particular moment. So I use a cortex of a tree in some of these pieces. In other one, I use mulch and uh, uh, then I find some printed burlap in a in a garbage can that say coconuts from Puerto Rico. So
Yeah.
talking about packaging, I find these burlap sacks. That was the packaging of of coconuts that people go there to the Bronx market and sell it in the street. And after he sell his coconuts, he throw it in the garbage.
Mm.
Uh, so I walk by and I say coconuts from Puerto Rico. So I did a series of these coconuts sacks, burlap, and I also was working in a performance for Semiótica del Batey, where I use slide projectors and a 16 mm projector. There was not video projectors at that moment. So I also hired some folkloric, Puerto Rican folkloric music performance, and they played when I was doing this performance. But there, when it becomes some conflicts in the Middle East, I took time to refer to 2004. It was a war, and I worked with this piece with pennies and bones, and of course painting. I showed that in a gallery in Soho, and I use bones that I bought from bones that you give to the dogs. Anyhow, the bones started smelling bad, and the gallery called me and told me that I need to remove that. So I put fake bones later. And okay, so then come to the digital time, and I start taking pictures of my installations. And from those pictures, I will build some digital images, like this one that is here. This is one of them. And I will print them as a G-clay. And these are, but these actually, because when you build an installation, sometimes it stay right there. So I decide to take pictures and use Photoshop, but not built-in filters, do my own filters. Because what you're saying is that people are using the art proposal of somebody else. It's a pre-made setting that some artists, because they are artists, they build this program and they give you this particular look. And then the person loses the opportunity to do it his own, to personalize his
No,
work.
it's funny when you open up Photoshop. I don't know if anybody ever noticed this or cares, but there's actual credits that roll, right? Like it's a movie or something. But in the credits are people like I think John Knowles is like a famous Photoshop developer, and a whole bunch of other designers and developers and coders. They made those things, those tools, and those tools are very unique, and it takes a lot of work to break away from the creative energy that those people put into that work to create your own stuff. Like it's not an out of the box ready to go thing. Like you have to learn how to break Photoshop in such a way that you're then exercising your own will, right? Your own creative will. It's hard. That's like the blessing and the curse of software, right? So I think it's interesting you're pointing this out.
Yeah, well, that's the timeline that I mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just for them, it become a very sophisticated timeline because you need to be a programmer, or you need to work with a programmer. But the timeline in this case is the programmer and the people who built the final result. And so these are the installations itself. That I work with Das Burlop and Benjamin Moore, 9 feet by 12. It's a reference from the archives, Puerto Rican archives. So the picture is a reference. I took it from there, and then I painted on a burlap, and it hangs from 2 holes in the side. It doesn't have a wood around, a frame. And okay, so that's the artworks. And also talking about agrarian identity, archetypes. This was a series of archetypes, and I used televisions. So these TV sets, I stopped doing videos, and it was Wolf. It was an artist that used to have used television in the 50s. and the 60s wolf. And I am using the snow of the TV. I stopped doing videos, manipulating video, and I just use the snow of the, because you remember that they eliminate the frequency signals in television to change to
Yeah, there's no
digital.
snow anymore. There's
All
there's
right.
no static.
So there is the snow, and I use it as a collage. Then I cut a picture and I glue it in front of the
Wow.
of from the moving image. I put it as a static image. You know, a steady image. It's not moving
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so materials. I just stay here with the materials and the team, still being about identity, place in the non-place,
Mm.
place in the non-place. Is this about the memory and history and the immigration? How you are in one place and tomorrow you are in other place, but your identity keep you tied up with where you coming from.
Yeah.
So a lot of us are, we live in New York, but I still talking about Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico and when I was a kid. So I am here, but I am there. And all of this is here in our perception and our identity energy. Back to timeline, the plan. I maintain that in here you can see a piece that is finished, and in the other side you see the drawings that took me to that piece. But the drawing itself, these are mixed media on paper. And Burlo, we have collage, and here is the same idea of personal history. And in this case, I find this light rope very cheap. It was like $75. I find amazing. I still have it, and I can use it for something else. But I
Yeah, you
think that
can
was a
you
good.
can you can trick out your car with it. I mean, put it in your
Yeah,
car and
yeah.
that's what the kids are doing.
And then at the end of my days, these have a little. These are for 2015, but then I am interested in physical elements, like the force of the arc,
Hmm.
force of the arc, because language become energy.
Yeah.
So here I start eliminating too much blah blah and getting into the art. For example, the energy of the arc, how we can, if we have a bone and arrow, then we can use that energy. In this case, I'm trying to use that energy to project a message.
Yeah.
And
This you mentioned Calder before, Alexander Calder. This very much it's like this doesn't, yeah, I would never confuse this work with Calder, right? But it's the same idea of energy and balance and movement. And I wouldn't even consider these mobiles or mobiles or anything like that, but they're definitely sculptural, and I can see this nod to Calder, right? This nod to like physics and balanced principles and things. It's very, very subtle. And I don't think in terms of like packaging, we see enough of that. I feel like you were talking about like early on in the beginning, you were saying looking at nature, looking at principles in nature, and like a mountain has a certain kind of balance because of the way it was made, right? The form, the processes that led to the mountain are all about balance, right? So I can see it like filtering here. It's really amazing.
yeah, but also you in the flat surface also is the visual balance.
Yeah.
Also that is more abstract because the
Yeah.
The physical energy is not there, but
It's not there. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's there in terms of the language, how the idea in a linguistic way appeal to that energy,
Hmm.
because a word as we speak is energy or
Yep.
appeal to energy. That's the reason that trick our brain, and I say a ball, and your
Yeah.
brain go there and say a ball, but it's a whole energetic movement. So I've been working in this. Of course, I still been burlaps and raw material, but looking for that energy, that language.
Yeah.
We go back to a plan. Our plans for
Wow.
the studies. This is the piece.
Wow.
Um, and this is the last thing, subject that I was approaching, but it's in progress, is took in consideration these icons from the Native Americans, right?
Hmm.
That they are the real Americans, the real Americans. Um, so they have this also the idea of American dreams. So these are dream catchers,
Mm.
working with the dream catchers, but they stay in progress,
Yeah.
and I haven't not touched it again, but I
I
will
mean,
maybe follow
but
up.
I see the Rauschenberg sort of influence too. This kind of reminds me of like, like Canyon by Robert Rauschenberg, and it's got like the same kind of vibe to it. And I'm noticing something now about your work that you did mention early in the talk, but this idea about materials having a history, right? Especially in like Rauschenberg's work, like with ready-mades, it's kind of like you came at this from a totally different angle, which was these pieces, how materials, especially found objects like garbage, essentially, right?
Mhm.
Discarded packaging has a history. It has like it's been used, it's been in someone else's hands, and then it was thrown away, right?
Mhm.
Discarded. Like that's the key word here. And then you're also like at the same time, just by virtue of the fact that you said you're interested in natural formations and natural materials and the texture of these things, like wooden slats and stuff like that. In this case, feathers, twigs, wood. But it's like it's weird. Like you almost came to the idea of sustainability, like sustainable design from a totally different direction, right? You weren't focused on like a designer would be like, we got to make packaging, but it has to be recyclable or compostable or biodegradable, right? That's a design perspective, right? You
Mhm.
need the package, that's your objective, but a side objective is sustainable design, right? Or it stacks neatly together to not waste any space, and right. Those are design considerations. Your considerations seem to be like the visual properties, the feeling, the history that it imparts. But then both the designer and the artist are coming at the same thing from totally different directions. And I think that's
Yeah,
really important to focus on.
that's because remember that as a conceptual artist, I
Yeah.
am focusing the meaning of art, and everything that I do is an exploration that
Hmm.
try to define or to answer that question that I make in myself to myself. And
Yeah.
in terms of if was a packaging proposal, then I will need to change some of it, but I
Yeah.
can
Of
manage
course.
it in the same through the same route. I
Yeah. It's the
comment to you
same
when
it's the same process in some way. Yeah.
exactly what I comment to you when we talked a couple of weeks ago about this time and space that we live. Uh, I comment to you that never in the history of humanity it was more art.
Yeah.
We consume art 24 hours all over, all
Yeah.
over.
All the time.
So
Yeah.
so 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 packaging, for example, become a daily activity
Hmm.
for in terms of users and in terms of builders. So
Yeah.
there is that combination because any communication needs two parts. You need to have a you need for to communicate. You need to the receiver and the person who is expressing. So
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
in the history of humans is being more art, and that without
Yeah.
talking about television, movies, music.
Yeah.
You imagine?
It's funny, like this you were talking about, and I thought this is just a side note, but you were talking about the noise on a TV, right? And how we don't have that anymore. We don't have like the white noise or the snow on a television set anymore. And which is now I'm lamenting how unfortunate that is. But you were able to sort of like capture it and use it in your work, which I think is really brilliant. But it kind of reminds me of so Don DeLillo wrote this book called White Noise, right? And it's like a novel. It has nothing to do exactly with what we're talking about, but in the book, it's like an 80s era book, right? 80s era novel when um like the one a central theme in the book is the grocery store, right? Walking into an American grocery store as a family is an adventure into and itself because we're surrounded by all these products. There's all these colors, rhythms, patterns. There's signs and symbols, right? Like our world of signs and symbols is on full display in the grocery store. And you're like
Mhm.
reading this book, and it's like the book goes off in a lot of different tangents, and it's a brilliant book, but it's like that one central thing. They keep coming back to the grocery store and like taking stuff off the shelf. And it kind of reminds me of that is that really is the American library of signs and symbols. It's like going to the grocery store. It's where we all have to go. We all have to be there, and we all are constantly messaged to and looking at like a gallery of different symbols and
That,
signs. And it's
that's what
kind of like yeah, Andy
Andy
Warhol, of
Warhol.
course, like pop arts, of course, referencing that, right? This idea that that is our culture now. It's sort of supplanted the older culture with this new sort of culture of bought and sold items, which I think is both scary, but also like a great opportunity for an artist like yourself and designers like our students to really seize that messaging. Like we have an opportunity to seize this great library that we're all sort of messaged to with, and we could do real important amazing things with it. It's not just about sustainable design, it's about who we are as a culture, who we are as consumers. Not to overstate it, but um we have a couple minutes, unfortunately, just 2 minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to show us?
No, because in 2 minutes,
Okay,
minutes
it's
I don't
not
want to
it's
get
not
in
enough.
trouble.
Yeah. All right,
I don't want to get
so
in trouble.
I do have one just one question. Um, I and this is something I much more generally that we talked about initially, which is that so often when people come here as immigrants, right, they are forced to kind of assimilate, right? And that
Mhm.
can mean their clothing, like they don't wear traditional clothing in the streets, right? They would wear American, what Americans wear, whatever people are wearing in the place they come, that's what they wear. Whatever language there is being spoken, the lingua franca, that's the language that people are sort of encouraged to also speak, right? In other words, especially in the United States, if you come here, you have to really change your whole package to fit in the outside world and be part of this community we live in. How much of that, this idea of assimilation, has has had how much of it has had an effect on the work that you've made, would you say?
Well, remember that as a Puerto Rican, I am conscious that we are a territory in a colonial status.
Hmm.
So that make I think that that's unconsciously that what hold me up to learn English in the right way and
Yeah.
talk without the accent. I think that unconsciously, because I've been here for many years and I keep saying,
Yeah.
things that nobody understands. What did he say? So I think that is a resistance
Mm.
in become, from the political point of view, we can use our identity package
Yeah. Yeah.
as a resistance for the imperialistic imposition. And imperialistic in a political, socio-political speaking, because there is different empires in different time and history.
Right. Right.
So
Of course. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
by suppression one territory and control their economy, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is identity become the self packaging, and that in some way in a resistance to have an understanding that
Yeah.
it's okay. Uh, you are in control, but I still be myself in some way. So you integrate yourself to certain point. That's
Right.
the
There's a
part, because you
balance.
need to,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Whoever lost that part then become dysfunctional. It's a lot of people who they think that because they have light skins they are white Americans, example,
Right.
and or any other group.
Yeah.
So you explain them, listen, yeah, it's not about the appearance. It's all do you values
Yeah.
and the cultural understanding. But some people they don't have no idea. So they start forgetting about their values and absorbing other values.
Yeah.
One thing is assimilation, and the other one is transculturation.
Transculturalization.
Transculture,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
transculture is when you don't forget your identity element and you bring them and share as well. You accept the other ones to share with what they have. And assimilation is when you forget about who you
Yeah.
are, and then you make the idea that you are somebody else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's
yeah,
dangerous. Well, listen, thank you so much, Luis. Thanks for sharing all your amazing work with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for coming. Uh, Please, everybody join us next week. We're going to be meeting with another artist talking about very similar things, actually, identity and immigration, but through a slightly different lens. But I'll see everybody next week. Luis, thank you again. Have a great weekend.
thank you.
I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Bye-bye, everybody.